Hello everyone, welcome back. JavaMentor.net here. In today's video, let's learn about lazy and eager initialization. So, first of all, I added three properties inside this application.properties file. The purpose of those properties is to see SQLs that are sent to the database. So yes, we are using JPA and Hibernate, but under the hood, JPA and Hibernate are creating SQL queries, and those SQL queries are sent to our SQL database. So we want to see those queries inside our log, right? So I started my application in the debug mode, and let me show you something weird. So in the last tutorial we saw some problem with lazy initialization exception and so on and so on. And here we retrieved book from the database, and now in the debug mode, if we try, let's say, book.getISBN, click evaluate, everything is okay. But if we try get authors, then we will receive a lazy initialization exception. But this is very, very weird. Like, this is only a getter. What can go wrong there? I mean, it's just returning these authors, nothing else. Just return authors. Okay, we have our @data Lombok annotation, but it's nothing complex. How it's possible that some custom JPA exception, Hibernate exception, is thrown from that getter? Okay, let's try it again. Send, and let's see what query is generated. So select and then some fields from the book, where ISBN equals something, because we tried to find by ID, right? And there is no join. You should notice that there is no join. So how are authors fetched? Well, they're not fetched, obviously. And the reason why authors are not fetched is that this list of authors is one-to-many relation. And every one-to-many relation is by default lazy, which means we will fetch those authors only when we need them. And that means only when we call getter on that field. So at that time, at that specific moment of time when get authors is invoked, that will be the time when SQL will be fired to the database to fetch those authors. So basically here, instead of a real list, we have some persistent bag. That's some implementation of the list of the JPA, and that persistent bag is the implementation of the proxy pattern. So when we try to fetch this persistent bag, JPA first check if authors are already present inside that persistent bag. If not, then it tries to fire SQL query to the database. That's a proxy pattern. And that is the explanation why we are getting exception when calling book.getAuthors. Our JPA see that we didn't fetch authors previously, so it tries to fire SQL request to the database. Unfortunately for us, we don't have open session, so that's where this lazy exception is happening. Let's explain for a second what is the session in this database context. So when you want to fire requests to the database, you need open connection. So you need to connect to the database, obtain one connection, and then send and receive data through that connection. If you don't have open connection, you're not able to send data and to receive data from the database. Now, precisely speaking, one connection can have multiple sessions, and if you say on some interview that session equal connection, that you will be wrong. Session is not equal to the connection, but for our learning purposes, it's okay to assume that that's something similar, that connection is equal to session, and that you need to have open session in order to properly communicate with the database. So when you connect to the database, one connection is created. Inside that connection, session is created, and then you are able to communicate with the database using that session. When your connection is closed, you are not able to communicate with the database. So we have two options, either to reopen the session so we can fire this request to fetch authors, or the second option is to instruct JPA, hey, when you are fetching book, please fetch those authors in one go. So at the same time when you are fetching books, when you are fetching book, fetch authors as well. And we will do that by putting fetch equal eager here. This is instruction for the JPA and Hibernate. Hey, please, when you fetch book, fetch authors at one go. If we try our endpoint now everything is fine with the book, with the authors. We are receiving proper result. 200 okay. We didn't receive that lazy exception. Everything is okay. And the reason why it's okay is that we fetched authors at the same time when session was opened, at the same time when we were fetching book. Now we need to explain you why we have those two strategies, lazy and eager. Well, first of all, you need to understand that when you are trying to call the database is external service, and calling the database is calling something over the network. And network is slow. And also when you transfer data through the network, you're trying to transfer the least possible data through the network. So you're not spending a lot of bandwidth, right? So every single time when you try to go over the network, you should strive to transfer the least possible data. And that is the reasoning here. What is your use case for the book? Do you usually need the data only for the book, or do you usually need data both for the book and authors? If you usually need the data about the book, only about the book and not about the authors, you should use lazy strategy. And then data about authors are not sent through the network, and we are not spending bandwidth for nothing because we will not use that author's data. If your use case is that you usually need those authors' data, well, then you need to go with this eager strategy and fetch those authors at the same time when you are fetching book. Okay, that would be everything regarding lazy and eager. Now in the next video, let's learn about caching concept. That concept is not related strictly to the JPA, but is heavily used by JPA, and that's why we need to understand what is caching after all. See you in the next video.